Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. If my voice is a bit scratchy, then blame it on Shankar Mahadevan, please. We were yelling and screaming from the top of our voice yesterday evening. Friends, on behalf of the Bahrain chapter of ICAI, I welcome you on day 2 of our international conference, Together Towards Tomorrow, Chartered Accountants as Strategic Partners. Let me introduce myself. I'm CA Mahesh Kumar Narayan, the Joint Treasurer of the BC-ICI ExCom for 2014-15. And I'm delighted to be your MC for the first half of today. Before we start the business end of today's session, a quick recap of housekeeping notes. Please ensure your smartphones, tablets, and other gadgets are on a silent or vibrate mode. It's raining. It's raining raffle today. Our sponsors have been generous in extending a large number of raffles, which will be called out during different sessions today. Key to mention here is a plot of land that will be provided by Expat Properties to one of the lucky winners. Raffles are also announced by our sponsors Nimai, Amar Insurance, and a special raffle for our CA women members. Bowls of raffle will be circulated during the breaks between each speaker. Please ensure you drop your business cards in that. Nimai Management Consultants have kept a dedicated business card holder for each member on their stands. Please visit their stands, get to know about their products, and collect your business card holder. The Q&A sessions will be at the end of each speaker's presentation, if time permits. Our speakers are available for interaction during the breaks. Please feel free to go and discuss your queries. Friends, we have a feedback form that will be provided during the afternoon session. Please give us your valuable feedback as you leave the hall after the end of today. Your badges that has been provided needs to be securely kept till the end of the last session, and you can trade your badges along with the feedback form at the exit for a wonderful return gift courtesy BCICI. Last but not the least, CP hours for today can be gained after registering at the registration desk. Those who don't have their membership cards, please sign on the registration form and contact our member Khushbu to get yourself the card at the earliest. Friends, yesterday we witnessed a galaxy of speakers, veterans in banking and finance sectors, sharing with us valuable information on a wide-ranging subjects. We have promised in our pre-event communication a never-before power-packed sessions, and we believe in that. Today, we have lined up yet another impressive lineup of speakers who are going to share the pearls of wisdom with us today. So please sit back and buckle up for yet another highly informative and interactive sessions ahead. Members, I will be failing in my duty if I proceed further without acknowledging the presence of a very familiar and well-respected figure in the CA fraternity. He is none other than our beloved President of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, CA K. Raghu. I understand CA K. Raghu has been having a hectic schedule in the past few weeks in the lineup to this event. And despite that, he has made time to be with us today, and he reached here at midnight of yesterday. Sir, we sincerely appreciate that, and we thank you for that. Mr. C.A. Raghu will be addressing our members during the course of today. Friends, our first speaker for today is a specialist in fraud investigation. The subject of fraud investigation and forensic studies has always been an interesting subject which everyone here would love to know more about. I have a unique way of introducing our next speaker through a short video clip. Friends, I am as excited as you are to be among the audience today and listen to Mr. C.H. Chetan Dalal. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming with a huge round of applause C.H. Chetan Dalal.
Thank you very much, friends. Thank you very much. Thank you. Friends, thank you very, very much for inviting me here. It's a privilege and a pleasure to be here amongst you. Baran is a familiar place as far as I'm concerned. I have been here a few years ago, and it was a lovely experience then as well, and it's really a delight to be here. Thank you very much. The subject that I have been given, Amit, if you can put on my presentation, please, relates to forensic accounting case studies. Now, this is the first session of the day. It's the morning session, and I can give you people two choices. One is we can have a very nice theoretical method where nothing but full of theory can come, or the second one is to enjoy it, have some music, have some fun, have some visual tests. Which would be the choice that you would like? Second, because I like that choice. I don't have that first presentation in any way. I was very sure that all of you would look for this. So let's keep this session as enjoyable as is possible. And we have the address of our president immediately following afterwards. So I don't want to eat on his time also. So I believe that there is some kind of an indicator here that I will be told now 10 minutes, 5 minutes. It's like the cricket match, no? So where are those people? I don't know. Who are the people who are going to tell me? But the other person. Okay, fine. Thank you very much. All right. So let's just start something as quickly as possible, because in these 55 minutes, to the best of my ability, I would like to share a few experiences that I've had. I also tried to check out what I had talked about in my previous session over here when I came 5 years ago, but somehow I don't have. So in case there's something repeated, please tell me. We'll rush through that and we'll go for something new. All right.
It was a credit card fraud study.
Wow.
From Sri Lanka.
My God, look at this. Okay, done. That is cancelled. So that will not come up today. All right. Let's look at some of the things today that we have in mind. Amit, I think I need your help. It's not moving. Just as a part of this academic thing, we should know, okay, what is the scenario of fraud? Actually, the scenario of fraud is absolutely grim. In today's world, they say that an average of 6% of an organization's revenue are lost by way of fraud. It can be from small little things to huge ones, but 6% is a very big number. And I'm making this statement based on some research carried out by the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners. But these are all numbers. Let's not look at the statistics at all. Let's have something more. So we'll just clear this slide. But before I start my main presentation, I just like to use, I'm a Bollywood fan, so in movies you see, okay, everything that you see in this movie is purely coincidental, and if there is any resemblance to any character living or dead, there is no intention. So same thing here. If you find some statement of Bank of India or maybe Institute of Chartered Accountants, it doesn't mean that there was a fraud there. This is just for the purpose of our discussion and for academic interest over here. So just take it as something, this is demonstrative only. Okay. Now, what is the agenda? I had actually the following 4 things in my mind. That first is, I would like to bring you to this world of fraud. What exactly is happening somewhere in our business circles, trade circles? I thought that, I'll give you a little introduction to that. The second thing is, what are the traits that you must, or ideally, in my humble experience, what I have found to be useful to be a good fraud or a forensic accountant? I think the introducer correctly said that I'm one of the best frauds. Actually, I have automatically deduced that he must have had a talk with my wife before she sent her here, because that kind of word is a common word I've heard at my house, what I am. Okay, then, why do frauds occur without being, caught early? Or if at all they are noticed very late. I've done some research on that, and based on that, I'm going to show you a few things which I feel has really allowed frauds to take place, and maybe in your endeavors in future, if you could be mindful of that, it might be of some help to you. And lastly, if there is time, I'll show you a few simple day-to-day usability of some forensic tests which might help you or enhance the chances of detection of some kind of fraudulent documents, fraudulent spreadsheets, and so on. So friends, without further delay, let's get on to the main presentation that I have in mind. Okay, now let's look at this world of fraud. Now in this, business fraud is a fraud which has been there since the dark ages, and it is going to continue. It is one line. Friends, I can assure you, whoever wants to take this up as a professional opportunity, you will never be out of work, because wrongdoers are here, wrongdoers will be there, wrongdoers will be there till the end of this world. So business is going to be there. Tax laws may change, service tax may come and go, other laws, Karo will go, Mao Karo will come, something else will come, but fraud will stay. It's a growing menace. So this is one of the most opportunistic areas that you can think of. And in this, just to bring you to this world of fraud, I'm just going to run past a few documents that you would see in day-to-day life. Like, let's say, for example, you see bank statements, you see MIS reports in Excel, you see pictures, you see checks, you see anything. So just let's see a very, very quick run through. Okay, now this is a bank statement, right? What you see, friends, on the screen is a bank statement. Then, what you see here is an MIS report in Excel. What you see next is a simple spreadsheet. What you see next is a check. What you see next is a cash receipt or cash payment receipt. What you see is a simple picture file. What you see is a will. Now friends, these are the documents, do you agree with me, that you come across in your day-to-day life? Now I showed you all these documents very quickly. None of you would have said that these documents are fraudulent, forged, or there is some kind of a falsification in some form or the other. Actually friends, all these documents, they looked genuine, but they were not. Including that picture. You saw that picture last, I'll just show it to you again. See this picture. It's a simple JPG file. All of you know what's a JPG file, right? Can anybody tell me what is a JPG file? It's a file which is there on a computer which shows some kind of a clip or a picture, right? Now, what can be a fraud in this file? I'll tell you. Now, this kind of the reason why I showed you all these exhibits very quickly, one after another, was that in our day-to-day life, we see these kind of Excel documents, we see these kinds of JPG files, but we seldom think that there could be something wrong. I want you to open your eyes to see where and how things can go wrong. So let's look at a few things in this. First, what is called organizational fraud? Fraud is something which actually lends damage. It could be financial damage, it could be abuse, it could be a damage to the image, it could be damage to the goodwill. Now this is something which we have to contend with, and for the first time in history, I think the Companies Act has actually defined fraud in the current scenario. So now this menace of fraud has reached a very, very serious proportion. And in this, the deception levels are extremely, extremely strong. Remember, friends, that you are dealing with people who are white-collar criminals, not the dacoit or thief that you meet on the road. These people are capable of lending much greater damage than what an average thief can do. Now, what are the good traits of a good forensic accountant? As I told you, for this purpose, before I go to the traits, first and foremost, let us understand what is the meaning of forensic accounting. Now, there is a long definition that is available in the various Webster's dictionary or encyclopedias and all. Forget all that. What is important, friends, remember, one line. That one line is anything. Forensic means the use of anything that is admissible or usable in a court of law. That is the key issue. If you give a report, that report should be one which a judge or which a jury can rely on. Now you may ask me, isn't an audit report a forensic report? Yes. But an audit report is an opinion. It has several disclaimers. There is a limit. It depends under which law, under which authority you've given that. It is attuned to that particular objective. But a forensic report is attuned to a specific need which is given. It could actually mean curtains for somebody. It could actually mean very far-reaching consequences. So therefore, a forensic audit report has to be backed by sufficient evidence that can be used or admissible in a court of law. This is the key issue that we need to keep in mind. And for this purpose, what is different between a forensic auditor and an auditor is something that all of you should know. See, an auditor provides an opinion based on documentary evidence. Is that right? That's the general belief, which is correct. That is the way it should be. But a forensic auditor examines the reliability of that evidence to see whether or not that evidence is sufficiently strong for him to give a submission, certification, or an opinion in a forensic report. And for this, I've done an imaginary case study just for us to understand. And it uses 3 skill sets. One is accounting, second is auditing, and third is detective skill sets. When you combine the 3, this is what the concoction that you get is what is known as forensic accounting. Now let's take a very simple case. Now this is just an imaginary case, but it is very interesting to understand the difference between an auditor and a forensic auditor. Now what you see over here is a person, a manager in a bank, who has apparently committed suicide. Now how has this happened? Now this fellow is the manager of a bank. He has committed suicide by, as per the doctor's report, he says that he has killed himself by drinking poison, some kind of a rat poison. Now, the poison was sent to the laboratory, and the laboratory confirmed that yes, the coffee that was there in the cup, which you can see on the table, contained that same rat poison. And then, under his note, under his hand, they found a small suicide note which was printed on that printer. You can see that printer? Actually, I can't see from here. Yeah, you can see that small printer which is there. In that, there was a suicide note on which he had written that, look, I am ending my life because I have embezzled a lot of money from the bank. I don't have money to repay this, and now, therefore, I am ending my life. And this note was printed on that printer, and his fingerprints were found on this particular paper. Actually, this is not fully visible over here. Can you see the fingerprints on that? Because it's not visible here. Okay, so that is the paper that was actually found. Now, these were the fingerprints that were found. Now, based on this, what really was done was, we'll just come this side. Most of us, if we are, let's say, simple auditors, not forensic auditors, what will we do is we'll form an opinion based on the documentary evidence. So what are the documentary pieces of evidence that we have so far, friends? We have one, a death certificate, right, from whoever has issued the death certificate. Second, we have the cause of death report. Yes, what was the death due to? By poison. The third thing is, what does the laboratory confirm? That the coffee also contained the same rat poison. Therefore, based on, and also on fingerprints, handwriting experts report says that those were whose prints? This man's prints, and plus there were no other fingerprints on this. So we are perfectly justified as auditors to say that when you have these 4 pieces of documentary evidence, yes, this was a death by drinking poison and it was suicide. Now that's a very good question. This is very, no, he could have prepared. I mean, we are basing our opinion on these 4 things. Now, as I told you, the difference between an auditor and a forensic auditor is that he checks the reliability and he uses his detective skills on this to find out whether any of these evidences can be challenged. Perfect. So let's see that. Now, the manager had not worn any gloves. That was obvious because you could see his fingerprints that were there on that. So there should have been fingerprints on the coffee mug. There were no fingerprints on the coffee mug. Second thing is, and this is the thing which most of us do not realize, is this. When you take a paper out from a printer, you normally will take it out like this, the way it is shown on your screen, right? When you take it out, there will be one fingerprint on the back side. Will there not be? The fact that there was no fingerprint on the back side, the question arises, how did he lift that and put it under his hand? So from there you know that this evidence is not sufficient to prove that it was suicide. It at least implies, I'm not saying it means, it implies that somebody else must have helped him in doing suicide. So that means it is not a simple case of suicide, it may be something more. Now this is what I'm trying to say, friends, that if there is evidence, very often we conventionally are used to accepting a piece of paper, however genuine it may be, as the final reason for coming to a conclusion. In fact, that is also possibly one of the many reasons why we fail to detect something that is wrong. Today, in many of the big-time fraud cases, you know that people have said, no, but there was a bank certificate saying that there was so much of a balance. It may be a certificate from State Bank of India with a rubber stamp, with details, everything. But is that statement genuine? We as forensic auditors, friends, need to be able to have or develop perceptive skills to be able to increase our chances of detecting things or statements which could be wrong. So let's go further on this. Let's look at something else. What are the traits? There are 3 traits which normally I feel are extremely important for us to be good forensic accountants, and though if I may be stretching myself a little bit, even to become good auditors, I think these 3 skill sets are important. First is distrust the obvious. In most international standards on auditing also, they say that professional skepticism is a part of an auditor's duty, is it not? So professional skepticism. Now what is professional skepticism? To doubt everything. I mean, don't take anything as true. It's, you must have heard of that joke. It's a bit stale, but if you don't mind, can I say that? Because I like that joke very much. There was this very suspicious wife, very suspicious wife. So she used to be very suspicious of her husband. Whenever he would come home, she would find some reason to get upset. So this husband comes home one day, and she finds a long strand of hair on his coat. So obviously she fumes and she's upset and she really blasts him left and right. So he was a simple man like me, so he just listened to her and then he said, okay, fine, doesn't matter. Next day when he comes, unfortunately for him, there was again a long strand of hair, and unfortunately this time it was white. So she uses the logic and says, you are so depraved, you are so pervert that you want to go after old women also, you should be shamed. Again, this fellow remains absolutely quiet. He doesn't say anything. Third day, the fellow uses his intelligence. So when he goes, before he rings the doorbell, he brushes his coat, this, that, and then he offers, like you go for that security check in the airport. So he offers himself to his wife and says, just check this out. But she is this typical wife who has this professional skepticism. No? So she doesn't believe that he's not gone out with a woman. So now she says, you've gone out with bald women. Aren't you ashamed of yourself? So this is the kind, you have to be like that wife. You have to doubt everything. Of course, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but that is the mental attitude that we have to keep. Please don't take me literally on this. I'm saying that's the kind of sharpness that you have to decide whether documents are reliable or not reliable. Then use multiple sources of information and use tact and diplomacy. Now, I can't explain but whatever I can, let's try. Let's look at various things that we have in mind. Do you like music, friends? Any of you are welcome to dance also, okay? Okay, now, friends, there is a price for this. Can you answer this question? Can you say what is happening in front of the truck? What is happening in front of the truck, sir? They are fighting. We have an answer here that they are fighting. Somebody is fighting. Do you agree with him? Yes. They are fighting? What is happening? Tell me. Fighting. Man?
Could be fighting. Maybe the music is playing inside the truck and these people are fighting outside.
But that is happening in front of the truck. But actually you are all wrong. Actually this is the back side of the truck. If you see this, now what is that? The front side of the truck is different. You don't know what is there in front of the truck. What you are seeing is the back side of the truck. Now just because I came around and I asked you, I put that music on, it was sufficient to deceive you, no? So everybody thought, yeah, I'm showing you the front of the truck. This is how fraudsters actually do. They give you a document, they make you believe something, they make you go in a certain direction. They want you to go in the wrong direction. I'm telling you, I've shown this slide maybe at least 20, 30 times across different parts of the world. Seldom have I come across a person who has actually said that, no, actually we are looking at the back side. And if you look at the picture carefully, if you look at it closely, you will be able to find out, see, there are no headlights on the truck. Can you see? I mean, do you require a forensic accountant to tell you that this is the back side of the truck? You just, see, the point is, you are so much concerned with what I want you to look at. That is the key point. Once you look at that, you don't look at anything else. And therefore, friends, this is one of the things that, to be able to keep an open mind is something not easy. And for that, again, on a personal note, I'm not talking about our institute or something, I find that doing a simple thing like meditation, when you get up in the morning, 10 minutes of meditation, whichever religion you may follow, whether it is Hindu, Islam, this, that doesn't matter. But 10 minutes of meditation helps you to cleanse your mind. Just as you take a bath, you eat food, you look after your hair, all these are what you do for your physical needs of your body. But we don't do much for our mental need. If you do a little bit of meditation, see the difference. I can promise you, friends, I can guarantee you, friends, that you will exponentially excel in whatever you are doing. Now, to take an example based on this, now a little study also, otherwise the institute will say this is CPERs and I'm only showing disco music, so it's not acceptable. So let's do something now. Now this is, friends, what you see is a vendor list, okay? A very simple vendor list. Now, I've just made an extract of a huge vendor list in a very big telecommunications company which had more than 30,000 such vendors. I'm sure any company, whether you take Hindustan Lever, Infosys, they'll have a huge list of vendors. Now, how can you find out whether there is something wrong? You see, this company where I had been asked to look at this vendor list, I told them, but sir, at least give me some transactions to see. So they said, no, we'll give you only the master file and let's see if you're an expert, you should be able to find something, no? So I said, only from the data of name, address and code numbers. So they said, it's a challenge. So what happens is when somebody gives you a challenge, you get that surge of energy inside, you want to show that you can do something. But having said that, I was quite nervous. I was not sure what I would be able to find. In this, I'm trying to make it very short. It has just 5 fields. What are the 5 fields that you can see, friends? You can see the date on which a vendor has been created, the vendor name, the vendor address, the vendor code, who created him, and certain things like PAN number, service tax number, sales tax number, and so on, right? What can you really do from here? One of the things which I'm sure all of you will tell me is that maybe duplicate PAN numbers. It's the simplest things. Is that right? That is fine. But again, that is one thing. That is what probably the person who wants you to look at will want you to look at that only because he also knows. Remember, you are dealing with somebody who is a person who has as much intelligence that we have, and if we are frank enough to admit, maybe more than us also. Okay? Now, when you're dealing with people like that, you have to be extremely, extremely careful in how you think. So here, we said we must look at things differently. Don't look at the back side of the truck, look at the front side of the truck and so on. So don't look at that, all those numbers, etc. Look at the first column. What is that? The date column. Now, friends, yeah, exactly. I think this was shown last time, right? Okay. Otherwise, I think you have kept a record of what I've said last time. Okay, doesn't matter. Okay. See, if you see the date, those of you who are experts in Excel, just raise your hands. Usually nobody raises them when you ask them, no? And when you don't ask, everybody says something, That's the whole thing. Who raised that? Yes, sir. How many different ways can you write a date in Excel? Perfect. So maybe 10, 12 different ways. Correct? So can you also represent dates as months, like say January, February, March, April? You can. Can you also represent dates as days of the week? Yes, you can. So that means what I thought is, any of these codes, now in a place like Bahrain, which Friday, Saturdays are the holidays? Can a code of a vendor legitimately or logically be prepared on a Friday or a Saturday? Normally, not. Let's forget emergency situations or where there is some requirement to have a code to make an early payment. Take those cases out, but otherwise not. Now, since this case study was done in India, we were looking at Sundays. So we said, is there a way? So if you look at it, there is a way. If you do this, if anybody wants, I'm just going through this quickly because I'm not going through the nuts and bolts as to how to do it. But there are icons available inside Excel which will show you how to convert this into the date column into days of the week. Now you can see the days of the week which have come in the leftmost corner. Now, what do you do further? You find out how many have been done on Sundays. So once you do that, you find that all these codes have been done on Sundays. And then what's the next logical question? Who has done it? So there is that same person, Raju. So in this particular case, merely by looking at the different kinds of codes which have been created on different dates, by filtering out those which were made on Sundays and filtering out how many were made by the same person, we came to know that there was this one person who was a Sunday specialist. He would come specially on Sundays, create codes. Many of those codes were genuine also. See, he would camouflage these codes in such a way that genuine codes were mixed up with some 2-3 non-genuine codes, and this was one of those rare occasions, very rare occasions, where we caught the fraud before it happened. Because over here, the intention of this person was to keep those codes in readiness and insert a bill as and when the chance came in. So we identified a few places where there were fictitious addresses in this kept, and when a bill came, we were able to nab the person beforehand. So friends, sometimes using your brain and looking at things differently. See, as financial people, we are all accustomed to looking largely at financial numbers. Is that right? See, in any database that you look at, most of the time you look at the numbers, amounts, values, quantities. I'm saying look at dates, look at times. You will find that a wealth of information is buried in that if you look in a different way. Look at data kaleidoscopically. Have you heard of a kaleidoscope? What is a kaleidoscope, friends? It's a cylindrical object which has 3 mirrors which are in an equilateral triangle, so that when you keep turning that kaleidoscope, the stones inside give you multiple images, so you get different patterns. The same thing is actually applicable to data. Now, this does the obvious. This is just a slide for your picture, for you to think. If you see, what is the impression that you get when you look at this slide, friends? That they are tilted. But actually, what is happening is they are not tilted. There is what we say, a defect in our mind which makes us feel that they are tilted. Because see, if I remove some color from here, you will find that they have become parallel. Can you see it? Now that you have removed the color, do you find that they are a little more parallel? That they say, according to our scriptures, that the human mind is born with certain defects. That is, we have what we call mala, vikshepa and agyana avaran. These are the 3 things. I'm not going into explanations of that. But because we have things, negative traits like anger, hatred, emotion inside, they cloud our judgment. We are not able to see reality as it is. The more you get rid of this, the more meditation you do, friends, I assure you, you will do much better. Why do frauds happen and why forensic audits are necessary? Now, friends, this is a question that we must ask. By the way, what is the time? Please keep me informed. How far away am I from my goal? I have gone or 20 minutes are left? Remaining, okay. So that means I have to keep 10 minutes for questions, is it? Out of that? Okay. 20 plus 10. Right. Yes, sir. Yeah. I'll tell you. Now, these are the main reasons for fraud. Now, most of us would feel that fraud happens only for money, but friends, that is not really true. Fraud can also happen because of spirit of adventure. You take a small boy, you tell him that you have a house, and you say that you are not supposed to go in that room. You just keep that door closed. Where will he want to go? the first place you'll want to go is in that room because you have been told not to do it. I'll tell you my own personal case. Recently means quite some years ago, I have been diagnosed as a diabetic. So as a diabetic, you are prevented from having sweets, right? All my life, till I did not have diabetes, I never cared for sweets. Even if the best of sweets were there, I never wanted them. But now I want to have sweets. Because the doctor has said, no, you can't have this, so no, I want to have that. Yesterday in the flight, somebody gave something. I was telling Mr. Oswalo sitting next to me, this is, something so difficult to accept. But this is really true, friends. When you are deprived of something, the first thing that you want to do is you want to break the law. That is the spirit of adventure. Jealousy. Sometimes there are two people. I wanted to become president, but Raghu has become the president. So somehow I must make sure that I take my revenge on Raghu. Now that is called jealousy, and I don't have it, so please don't do anything. Okay. Then disgruntlement. I'm unhappy with life. My life at home is bad. This, that. Then this also. You bring out your. Anger is also a kind of energy. It comes out in some form or the other. And lastly, company sponsored. Now, this is unfortunately another evil which has been happening a lot in the current times. Moral values have fallen very low, and today you find an in-between companies, corporate espionage, things like finding out, damaging, vandalizing other companies has become a big thing. So there are a whole lot of reasons for fraud to take place. And we as auditors, as chartered accountants, must be mindful of this. Not only that it's because of money. Money may not be the central reason. Why does fraud not get noticed at an early stage? There are such big frauds, right? Starting from Enron and then afterwards coming recently to Satyam and Reebok and National Spot Exchange and all that. These are huge. They run into thousands and thousands of crores. Why is it that these happen? The reason number one is fraudsters are intelligent. This, you agree with me that fraudsters are far better than us. I like to give this very famous example of Charlie Chaplin. Has everybody heard of Charlie Chaplin? He was a legendary actor, mime artist, comedian, whatever have you, in his lifetime itself. You remember that? Now, there is a very nice story about him to illustrate this point. He used to stay in Chicago. Once, during his lifetime, there was a competition, Charlie Chaplin imitation contest. So, they had held a very big contest where there were judges, big prizes, and they called people, and people from far and wide came to attend that contest. So Charlie Chaplin was alive. So he said, let me also go and see how these people are doing it. But then he was a very innovative person. So he said, no, I won't go to see. I will go as one of the many participants incognito, not telling them that I am the Charlie Chaplin. So he went, he performed along with all these others. And what happened when the judges announced the results? He was not first, he was not second, he was a distant third. So that means two Charlie Chaplins were better than the original. The same thing happens. Today a fraudster's bill, a vendor invoice, you will find that the person who genuinely is let's say a supplier, he will not be able to know which is the original, which is his invoice or whether it is their invoice. Because in today's world, to create fraud, technology has come, experience has come, expertise has come. It is extremely, extremely difficult to be able to spot an intelligent fraudster's wrongdoing. Therefore, friends, remember that this is one of the primary reasons why frauds don't get caught. Second thing is technology. How many of you agree with me on technology, friends? Technology, is it not something which helps a lot to fraudsters? Have you people heard of steganography? Anybody has heard of it? This is very important because I want to tell you in that case. No? Okay, I'll tell you what is steganography. Okay, let me just go through that. Next slide. What do you see here, friends? I showed you somewhere in the beginning, that this was a picture, a JPG file. Is that right? Oh, where is the tree in between? Okay, so you are actually examining the picture. No, I'm just talking about the file. By the way, I have not painted it, so I don't know what it is. Anyway, the point is, but it's good. I will remember that in my future classes that somebody can even talk about the quality of the picture. But we'll have a critical appreciation later. Right now, let's have the technological appreciation. See, there is this unfortunate art or unfortunate facility available. For those of you who are interested, there is one program which you can download from the internet. It is called OurSecret, OURSECRET. Now, it is a steganography tool which is available for a 7-day trial period freely. Now, what does this actually do? What does this actually do, friends? This thing helps a person to hide and smuggle information. So let us say I am working for Infosys, and I have some friend outside with whom I want to send some classified information of Infosys. So what I will do is, I will, from my email address, I will send this picture to somebody outside. Okay? That person outside will have this, what we call OurSecret, this tool, and he will be able to find some information which is hidden inside it. So how does he do it? OurSecret helps a person to identify two files. One is what we call a carrier file. So this picture file that you see on the screen is a carrier file. So the program will ask the person, okay, this file will be the file which will be visible at all times when you are using it. Then they will say, please identify the hidden message or the other file that you want to send. So suppose you want to send an Excel sheet. So that program will embed that Excel sheet, and it's something like this. Okay, that program will have this kind of a file which is hidden inside. An Excel sheet which is hidden inside the JPG file. So let's say if I am working in Infosys and I am sending this information to a friend outside, even if the systems administrator happens to see that file, what will he see? He will just see those trees, and maybe he'll pass that comment like that, the trees are not correct or something like that. But he will not know that inside that there is a hidden message which is there, and this is that file which is gone there. Now friends, what is this? This is known as steganography. In simple words, it is known as hiding or smuggling of information. Sorry sir, what's the time? 15 minutes. Left, including questions? No. Okay. Okay. I am very tense, you know. It's like a person who's come to 90s and that to get that 100 mark, I don't know whether I'll be able to do that. Okay. So, this kind of a situation, it is very difficult to determine, that's a good solution, thank you. It is very difficult to find out whether there is a file. You know, this art is known as an art of hiding information inside something else, inside a file, inside a record or a data file, whereby it is meant to be smuggled outside to unauthorized people. Now, this word steganography is a science which was there even in the Dark Ages, even in the earlier years. It seems when there were war times in, let's say, Greeks and Trojans and Troys and all that, that time also there used to be steganography in a physical form. What were they doing in those days, friends? In those days, they were actually using things like slaves. You know, there were those bonded labor whom they had. What they would do is, if they wanted to send the message across to somebody else across the enemy line, they would take the slave, make him unconscious, shave off his head. They would tattoo a message on his head and then allow the hair to grow back. The slave also would not know that there is some message which has been tattooed on it. He just is told to go and meet somebody there. So then they let him loose across the enemy lines. Now there are two possibilities. One possibility is that the slave could get caught by the enemy soldiers, and the second possibility is that he might reach the person to whom he was supposed to deliver the message. Now if he is caught, it is highly unlikely that the enemy would know where and how the message was hidden, which would be under his hair. But if he reached the person to whom he is supposed to deliver the message, that person would know, he would shave his head, read the message and come to know what is done. So that was the art of what we call steganography in those days. Come this century, you now find that it is done using computers. And I'm told, I don't know how far it is reliable, that the 9/11 attack which happened on the World Trade Center, all the messages which had to be sent across to various pilots as to which plane to sabotage and where to hit and all, was given through this kind of steganographic messages. Unfortunately, friends, I'm very sad to tell you that though such a tool exists, to my knowledge, I'm not an expert on this, but to my knowledge, there is no solution to this. There will be on the net several tools, they call themselves tech detect tools and so on. But frankly, if I were to give a suspect computer to the best of an IT expert or a digital forensics expert and tell him, can you find out how many of these files contain embedded steganographic messages? I doubt whether he would be in a position to find it. So this is the unfortunate truth. My intention was to just bring to your table that yes, we are at risk, this does happen, but solutions are not there. Now, you may also say, okay, this is fine, but Mr. Dalal, in what way does it affect us in our day-to-day work? Remember I showed you a few spreadsheets. Amit, can you help me to put that star contest? I want you to see one file, and I'm prepared to give a prize. And this prize is right here with me. It's called Star Contest. Yeah. Yesterday, I believe you had a program from Shankar Mahadevan, so it sort of gave me a little idea. So let's say there is this file. Can everybody? No, not this file. No? There is another one, Star Contest. The second one. Yeah, just click on it, please. Okay. Is it readable to everybody, the file, friends? It is, no? Okay. Now, friends, if you look at it, what does it show? It shows that there are 4 singers. Asha, Sonu, Rafi, Mukesh and Maika. And there are, 5 singers and 4 judges. Is that right? And each of the judges has given some marks out of 10. Right? Now, tell me friends, who is the winner in this? Which one? Correct. So, very good. Very good, ma'am. So, what do you think has happened? Do you think the formula that I've given is wrong? How?